Is it safe to assume that the tribal consultation and corporation consultation will occur in 2017?
Yes, there'll be another one right after we do critical habitat,
okay, or
somewhere in that mix.
With that consultation, will it be with the tribes or will it be with the Eskimo Walrus Commission representatives?
It'll be with each individual tribe that wants to consult, as well as the regional corporations, and if they want to consult too. So we'll be sending out letters here, probably within the next week, to all the tribes and corporations that are within the range of the walrus to ask if they want to consult on this process. Yeah, Vera.
I'm just curious why the regional corporations and not the Alaska Native organizations like the Eskimo Walrus Commission. How does the regional corporation fit into that?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that's in the President's executive order that we have to consult with the tribes and the corporations. So it's supposed to be a government-to-government consultation, and I don't know why they threw the corporations in there. Tell you the truth. They did.
Given the Walrus Commission's co-management partner under the Marine Mammal Protection Act, how will their voice be counted on the ruling? Is there a voice for the Walrus Commission on the ruling of the ESA if that does happen?
Yeah, well, certainly, during the public comment period.
Okay, public
comment. And hopefully we'll sort of weave that throughout, by doing the TEK work as well as the government-to-government consultations. I mean, it won't be specifically with the commission, but hopefully all those things will lead to a common sort of understanding of what the commission would.
What do you plan on getting out of the TEK workshop?
Well, lots of information that we can't get out of scientific stuff, more or less. Some studies, that are information that local hunters would have. I'll move on to polar bears. I was asked to talk about the quota on the harvest limits that's coming up. Basically, my understanding, and I'm not on the polar bear program, so I'm not an expert on this thing particularly, but my understanding is that the idea of a quota, a harvest limit, came about with a treaty that the United States and the Russians undertook. I think Charlie Johnson with the Alaska Nanook Commission several years ago was trying to figure out a way that the Chilcotin people could harvest some polar bears. At the time, the Russians didn't have a harvest. And in this treaty, it was basically worked out, well, if you set a quota for bears, then we can allow this harvest. And the quota is supposed to be evenly divided between the Chilcotins and the Alaskans. I guess they've come to the point where they've gone through some modeling exercises and things to figure out that it looks like they can probably harvest about 58 bears annually, or is that over the 5-year period?
Yeah, there was a shared harvest management plan that distributed the 29 bears. There was an idea to do it regionally allocation, so 29 bears for 33 communities in the Chukchi Sea polar bear range.
Is that over a 5-year, or is that each year?
They were hoping for a 5 years so that we could bank similar to the walrus, or excuse me, the whaling harvest. So you can bank for, and account for the low harvest years, and then also borrow and share strikes as you would the walrus, or excuse me, the whale harvest.
Okay. And I know that no more than 9 of those are supposed to be females.
Right.
So just to have that clear, the U.S. gets like 24 bears within 5 years over a spread?
Yeah.
Oh, I get. Okay.
It's 29 bears each year. So for 29 times 5, and it's all the communities in that Chukchi Sea polar bear population range. So from about Icy Cape is where the original boundary line is, but from what I understand, the boundary line extends into Barrow.
Right.
So from Barrow all the way down to Hooper Bay is where the southern extent of the Chukchi population range is.
Okay.
And so of those 5 years, 29 bears per year, no more of those can be, if we have a quota of 9 females taken, the harvest has to stop. The harvest, from what I understood before, also included human bear conflict.
Yeah.
So any
Okay.
bear removed from the population will be counted against the quota.
Okay.
And that's sort of an average over the 5-year period. So if you have a year of low harvest, then you have a year of high harvest. It's not going to
Okay.
cause you to exceed the quota, theoretically.
Besides the Chukchi, are there other sea bear stocks that are managed similarly?
Canada, yeah, they have.
They have an I&I agreement, the
Yeah.
Inupiaq and Inuvialuit agreement to 40 bears per side up in Barrow with Canada. So Barrow and the North Slope Borough are under 2 different management treaties, so to say. And it's a gentleman's agreement. There's no steadfast regulations or repercussions if you go over 40, but they've been within the harvest reports that hunters have gave to Fish and Wildlife have kind of maintained that number.
Is there one in north of Europe with Greenland and Iceland and Spitsbergen and all those places?
Yeah, I believe so. I think Hudson Bay and all those sort of have a harvest management system. I know they will issue licenses to the native hunters, and they can actually take people out on guided trips and earn some income doing that. But I don't know what their quota levels are. But
There's 2 populations in Alaska: the southern Beaufort sea stock, and then this Chukchi Bering sea stock. And the Chukchi sea, through numerous years of market capture and study, have shown to be the healthiest population of the 2 here in Alaska. Larger family groups, larger in size, females and males. And so that's one thing that's kind of hanging up everybody, but it's the loss of sea ice that is also the big threat.
so what we're trying to do now, I think they're from what I understand, they're planning to start implementing this next year or fairly soon, and they're trying to work out a process so that they can get real-time reporting of the harvest, so they will know, if a bunch of females get harvested right off the bat, they'll know that and be able to adjust things if possible.
So I don't know all the laws. So what status does the polar bear have in the U.S. then? It's not endangered, it's not protected?
Well, it's listed under the ESA as threatened.
Threatened?
Yeah, there's an exemption for Alaska Natives to hunt bears under the Endangered Species Act.
Okay, just curious.
And that exemption is part of the Marine Mammal Protection Act too. So polar bears are kind of covered with both statutes, but a lot of times the ESA will have a bit more requirements when they get listed, such as the requirement for other federal agencies to consult with the Fish and Wildlife Service if they're going to do something in polar bear habitat or near polar bears. Yeah.
So, something that I wanted to mention earlier. So, what if industry takes one, like Shell?
It's counted. Every polar bear that is removed from the population, even if it's an orphan cub, will be counted against the quota. Every removal, whatever it is, if it's a female that was harvested and there was, the hunter didn't know that there was a cub, those 2 would count. And so it kind of hurts that subsistence or access to and the quota for subsistence, because everything's counted under that 29. Fish and Wildlife has done too some harvest records, and right now I don't know if it's changed, but under this new shared harvest management plan, they wanted to bump in the reporting to where hunters have to report their harvest in 2 days to make sure we have an accurate number of that harvest quota. Right now, under the ESA and the Marine Mammal Protection Act, you have 30 days to report your harvest. In some years, we've gone well over 29 bears, and that's out of a few handful communities, not 33. There's some kind of interesting discussions that still need to happen, I think, between Fish and Wildlife and the National Commission and other communities.
Yeah, so there's a real need to, try to keep pretty close tabs on, what's going on as it's happening, so that we don't try to avoid exceeding these numbers in any year. And they're always seeking input from hunters and others who might have some information to share, or can think of a way to do this to make it work for everybody. And I've got some handouts, if you want one, that have some specific information on contacts and some more details about this, if you want those.
So that information provided for in this area too, the corporations too as well in the village?
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe so. I know they've had a bunch of village visits the last several years and planning to do more. They were just in Wales, I think, last week, talking about this.
If you get 40 this year, do that cut down next year?
We haven't gone into this treaty agreement yet, so it right now it's roughly, I guess you would say, an open harvest for now, under the same kind of marine mammal protection regulations as you have. So any Alaska Native coastal dwelling resident can harvest a bear, and they're not held to this treaty yet, and so this treaty won't go in effect till, like Jim was saying, about 2017 perhaps. That early.
So then after you harvest a bear, you're supposed to get it tagged within 30 days.
Who would all sign on to this treaty? Would it be tribes or?
Well, no, it's just the United States and Russia. There's what they call a bilateral commission, which has representatives from both countries on it, and they meet regularly and talk about issues such as this, probably mostly the last several years, as well as other things. And it, like I said, it includes representatives from the United States as well as the Russian Federation.
They actually have one federal government agency, one native representative from each country. So 4 individuals are the heart of the governing body there with that representation. They also have a scientific and TEK working group, which is made up of scientists not only in the United States but other countries have weighed in, and they have Alaska Native organizations like the NANA Commission who've presented and provided information on traditional knowledge. We've also had the Russian equivalent on the other side, CHAZTO. They're the Union of Marine Mammal Hunters on the Russian side, so they're a native organization there that have contributed as well to the knowledge and kind of the science of the population for that governing body. And they meet every year, so they alternate countries, so once in the US, once in the Russia.
Yep.
So, from what I remember, that the female polar bear are more tied to a landmass than the males are. The males just kind of roam the ice cap, and in a lifespan might make 1 or 2 orbits of the North Pole. But the females, once they reach sexual maturity, tend to den up and have young on land. Is that pretty close to correct?
I think so. I know they also, they'll den out on the ice too.
And so my question was that the quota is, whatever it was, 8 females and 29 total animals, and so that's predominantly males, which are kind of the shared common property resource. It seems a little different. Anyway, so you all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good chance you take somebody else's. Okay.
Well, yeah. I don't know about how they. I think they did a lot of looking at past harvest data and sex and age composition of that harvest, and doing some computer modeling and stuff, and trying to figure out what would be a sustainable harvest given what they've seen in the past and what's going on now.
They've also talked at the Joint Commission meeting the year of the harvest. So at what season in the year would they start the harvest? And the Russian counterparts really recognized that the female population den a lot over by, I think it's Wrangell Island up north. And so they didn't want to start their harvest time till after they'd come out of their dens. And it was absolutely no harvest of female with cubs, similar to what it is now in our United States regulations. And then I think the United States was pushing for an annual January to December kind of calendar harvest year. I don't know what updates, if any, are of that.
You haven't heard anything, any change in that or updates for that situation? Like I say, I've got some handouts if people want them to get some more details about that, as well as some contact information if you've got something you want to share or ask questions of the polar bear program in Anchorage.